My name is Aster. I was honestly pleasantly surprised by the reaction to my last video on reworking epic lyrics. A lot of you were really open-minded and found it a fun exercise. The comments had a lot of productive discussion in them, whether it was agreeing with my changes or disagreeing with my changes, just a lot of good discussion. And that makes me really happy. I honestly didn't know what to expect. I do want to clarify a couple things, though. This isn't meant to be a personal attack on anyone, it's just something I enjoy doing, really. I love breaking down lyrics into molecular detail, it's kind of the point of this channel. Not to mention, it's healthy to critique art. I think sometimes the best thing a growing artist can hear is no. Shielding them from criticism only stagnates them. Plus, my goal is to better communicate what the lyrics were already trying to say, not to override them with my own story. I also want to try my hand at singing during the video. When you rework lyrics, trying to go 1-1 on meter and melody can be difficult and limiting, so I had to take some liberties. I understand it's not easy to figure out the new meter though, so I'm going to try and sing it to give you a better idea. Please be patient with me, I'm way out of my depth, I'm not replacing any of the vocal talent on Epic, that's for sure. With that out of the way, let's take a look at some more wacky lyrics. One that was recommended to me many times was Thunderbringer. Thunderbringer, here to ring your ears until you're deaf with fear and spear you while your death is near. Lightning wielder, here to yield your time for you have passed your prime, sublime you for your act of crime. I decided to go with the whole chorus because this is the textbook definition of rhyming too close to the sun. Look at this. A, B, C, D, B, C, D in 3 lines. That's ridiculous. What's really a shame is that the first 2 lines are actually good. The logical progression and rhythm is there. The issue is that third line where the rhymes have been forced in and the metaphor falls apart. You look at the first 2 lines, Thunderbringer, that's sound related. Ring your ears, sound related. Deaf with fear, also sound related, if an unusual phrase. Fear doesn't deafen people. Anxiety raises your sensitivity, if anything. That's part of fight, flight, or freeze. Regardless, you see the consistency of the language. Then it goes to spear you while your death is near. That has nothing to do with sound. It's a physical action, and a strange one at that. Spear you while your death is near? Merciless, sure, but Zeus, I feel, wouldn't need to wait for someone to be on their last legs before killing them. Again, it's so obviously there for the forced rhyme. If it were up to me, well, before I get into the weeds, I'm hesitant about keeping bringer and ringyor because I'd have to keep the same pattern for the next part of the stanza. I don't want to remove Thunderbringer though, since that's the song title. Maybe I'll change Lightning Wielder down the line. Now, the rhythm of lines 2 and 3 emphasize these beats, so my instincts tell me to end each line with a triple rhyme. This cleans up the rhyme scheme and makes things sound more natural. Thunderbringer, here to ring your ears until you're paralyzed, your every heartbeat terrorized. I also removed the rhyme at the beginning of lines 2 and 3 because it just doesn't do anything but make things more difficult to word. That aside, I did remove deaf with fear because, as I mentioned, it doesn't really make sense. Fear doesn't deafen you, but it can scare you stiff. There's a reason petrify means both terrified and turned to stone. I elaborated on that with your every heartbeat terrorized, which characterizes the fear as all-consuming. The terror is striking as deep as it goes down to every heartbeat. Even if you don't like this change, something I want you to take away is the level of intentionality I'm using. I'm not saying, oh, this rhymes and it kind of makes sense, so let's go with it. I'm being particular about the rhythmic placement and overall image. That's what informs my word choice the most. Let's move on to the far more infamous part of this stanza. Lightning wielder, here to yield your time for you have passed your prime, sublime you for your act of crime. So, yield. To yield means to either bring forth from cultivation, or to give something up, or give into it, or allow it to be another person's. My work yielded a bountiful harvest. I yielded to oncoming traffic. I yielded to the pressure and took a drink. I yielded to the officer. There are so many ways you can use yield, but not a single one of those makes sense in yield your time for you have passed your prime. Zeus is giving Odysseus an ultimatum, so you'd think he's referring to the shrinking amount of time Odysseus has, especially with the phrase past your prime being present. What on earth is yield doing here then? Zeus isn't giving Odysseus more time or allowing that time to go past him at a 3-way intersection. It's there solely because it rhymes with wielder. There are 13 definitions of yield according to Merriam-Webster, and this line managed to use none of them. Similarly, sublime. As a verb, to sublime means archaically to exalt, which is definitely not what's happening here, or to move matter from a solid state to a vapor state without going to the liquid state. This process is known as sublimation. Technically, you can take that to mean Zeus wants to vaporize Odysseus, but it's a term used almost exclusively in a chemistry setting. It's like if I use the word ionic bond or osmosis in this context. I'm sure you could make it technically work, but some words are pretty strictly jargon. I did see some comments saying, well, Zeus is really prideful and he's using words he doesn't really know. You know that's not the case. You know it's there for the rhyme. Sublime rhymes with time, that's it. Both these words have to be removed. Because wielder has very few rhymes, I'm going to have to change that too. Oh, and act of crime also goes. We have a word for an act of crime, it's just called crime. Crime's already in action. Whole stanza is changing, sorry. I want to do something about how in Greek storytelling, defying the gods is a gigantic no-no. Storm winds roaring, hear my warning, defiance leaves you powerless, a cost to match your cowardice. This took literal hours to fix, but I did not give up. I love a good puzzle. 4-syllable lines that end in a double rhyme are a weak spot for me, for some reason. I think I managed. Worth noting, though, that of the 2 hours it took me to change that line, the first 15 minutes were coming up with what you see here, and the next hour, 45 minutes, were me doubting myself and going back again and again and again until I realized, oh, my first instinct was actually the correct one. Anyway, sung all together, the chorus would sound like this. Okay, Thunderbringer really doesn't work with my voice, so I enlisted a friend to help me. Take it away, Austin.
Thunderbringer, here to ring your ears until you're paralyzed, your every heartbeat terrorized. Storm winds roaring, hear my warning. Defiance leaves you powerless, a price to match your cowardice.
Now, there are many other questionable lyrics in Thunderbringer, but I don't want to spend this whole video dismantling that one song. We have to move on to another. For our next example, the second EP of the project starts with the song Polyphemus. Polyphemus? Polyphemus. And that starts with this. Look at all this food, look at all these sheep. I can't believe this cave has all this for us to keep. I've got to hand it to you both. This is quite the treat. There are enough sheep here to feed the entire fleet. It's almost too perfect, too good to be true. Why would the Lotus Eaters pass up on all this food? I chose these lyrics because they're incredibly children's picture book-esque. The extremely literal phrasing, the cute long E rhymes, the straightforward meter. It's not even about anything interesting. I thought it would be a fun challenge. The most difficult aspect to deal with, of course, is that I have to find a way to justify how, wow, there sure are a lot of sheep here, should be 6 lines. Originally, I was going to focus on the sensory qualities of the cave, but I decided it wouldn't be necessary. These lines have quite a joyful and relief melody to them, and that should be the focus. Let's see if I can add some more of that language. Are we in a dream? Are we truly saved? Could such a miracle be found in a simple cave? I took advantage of the held note on food by replacing it with a weightier word, which is dream. I also avoided mentioning the sheep directly so we don't distract from the emotion. The use of questions reinforces the stunned disbelief that hints towards something being wrong. Let's move on to the next couplet. Something I noticed in the first line was an unusual emphasis on I gotta hand it to you both. There's a hold on you that appears there for no reason other than to fill a missing syllable. Like I mentioned in the last video, if you're only aiming to describe the literal, you run the risk of not having enough to say in a line. That's why some sentences in epic can feel overly wordy. What's funny is that I gotta hand it to both of you would add the needed syllable, but that's not my plan. Point is, I have to change the melody here slightly. It's a necessary evil sometimes, and to be honest, so is plain language. It's needed sometimes to get the point across. My issue is when there's only plain language. You've gotta give yourself credit. Trust your gut. There must be 20 sheep here all for us. Here I use blunt speech, but I feel it's more descriptive and more justified as a lyric. There's a level of observation. I even kept some of Epic's casual language. Before we continue, I do want to describe what I mean by plain or blunt versus descriptive language. Blunt language is what I call sentences that say exactly what's happening without identity. A sentence like, there are enough sheep here to feed the entire fleet is blunt. It's a direct observation. It's no different than I saw an orange cat or Boston has a women's hockey team, go Fleet. Basic facts. We could add identity through several channels, the inclusion of opinion, keyword choice, imagery, context, the list goes on. I can take I saw an orange cat and turn it into that's the cutest orange baby I've ever seen, oh my god. I could also turn it into a ball of orange fluff streaked across the alley. These sentences communicate more distinct emotion, story, and characterization. For the epic lyrics, there must be 20 sheep here all for us is not nearly as dramatic a change, but the inclusion of must be and all for us add a subtle awe as well as a hint of selfishness. All of us also makes the statement a bit more personal since it includes the speaker with everyone else. I will concede that the blunt nature of the original lyric can definitely be argued to be more befitting of a soldier reporting to his captain. This is just my personal preference for this moment. By the way, did you know one lamb can feed 50 adults? That's crazy. Imagine what 20 sheep could do. Moving on, the next couplet is the last one before the Cyclops shows up. Appropriately, it's the one with the most suspicion. As a reminder, it's almost too perfect, too good to be true. Why would the Lotus Eaters pass up on all this food? I'll admit there's nothing technically wrong with these lines, although now that I read it out loud, they feel a bit off. They're just a little plain for my tastes. Also, with the instrumentals not communicating any build-up until the Cyclops appears, I want to add some sort of sensory detail. Cyclops aren't the most subtle of beasts. Not only that, but the following lines have the Cyclops mention the sheep have already been killed. I didn't get that from the lines we've been looking at. The Cyclops appears with no warning, so I wasn't aware that any time had passed. I could work that in too. A knife in the throat, a meal for the fleet. Why can't I shake these growing tremors beneath my feet? That last line doesn't sit quite right with me. I think I made it too detached from the previous line, but that can easily be fixed with a conjunction. Finally, altogether we have, are we in a dream? Are we truly saved? Could such a miracle be found in a simple cave? You gotta give yourself credit. Trust your gut. There must be 20 sheep here, all for us. A knife in the throat, a meal for the fleet. So why can't I shake these growing tremors beneath my feet? And that took a lot more work than you think. Songwriting is one of those things where oftentimes it's the simple stuff that trips you up. I like to say one of the most difficult aspects of writing lyrics is finding interesting ways to phrase familiar concepts. Next up, a particularly infamous line from Luck Runs Out. You could be caught off guard and lose your life, or piss off this god and infuse us with strife. I got asked to look at this by multiple commenters. It's a glaringly awkward lyric, that's for sure. I'll get to the second line in a bit. Let's look at the first. You could be caught off guard and lose your life. Not bad. Eurylochus is warning Odysseus about asking the wind god for help. It's a mostly unproblematic line, though the uplifting underlying instrumentation makes it a bit dissonant. To change it, I'm going to tie it to the wind, since the characters are discussing a wind god. My question then becomes whether to keep the triple rhyme at the end. I'm definitely not fitting in the slanted rhyme of guard and god. Like, come on. The emphasis does land on the third to last syllable, but also on the remaining two. Lose your life. This metrical foot is known as a molossus and is quite uncommon in English. The lyrics treat it more like a cretic foot though, long, short, long. Regardless, I could go the easy route and have the line end in an ing verb, but the emphasis on the final syllable would have me awkwardly emphasizing ing. So let's try, you could be swept away by her howling rage. The words swept and howling naturally invoke associations with the wind. I know this line doesn't explicitly say Odysseus is risking death, but we do use swept away to refer to someone losing their life to a storm. So the specific warning is there without using the words wind or storm. You see how that works? Association is such a cool writing device. Next, or piss off this god and infuse us with strife. Piss off this god has been pointed out by many to be ill-fitting even for an adaptation with modern language. It feels unnatural and its casual nature doesn't fit the dramatic delivery. Obviously, that needs to be next. Infuse us with strife is another phrase that exists solely for forced rhymes. Infused is a pretty ridiculous word to use here. It's one of those things that technically makes sense. You can say someone is infused with enthusiasm, sure, but it's more associated with food or chemistry. I can infuse water with lemon. I can infuse lotion with essential oils. These phrases feel more natural because they're more in line with the connotation of the word. Connotation is crucial. It's why a thesaurus can be a dangerous weapon in the wrong hands. Words that seem like synonyms could have non-interchangeable uses. I mentioned the word petrified earlier. That's actually a good example. Two synonyms of frightened are panicked and petrified. While they both mean filled with fear, they invoke completely different actions and visuals. When someone is panicked, you associate that with movement, fretting, running around. If someone is petrified, we associate that with being so scared you can't move. You can't swap these two words. The definitions are different. Another reason this line is a lost cause is because it actually lowers the stakes of the previous line. We start with you could lose your life, and then go down to you could make the god angry and that will fill us with dissent. What I'm going to do is have line 2 be about the consequences of Odysseus dying. I did keep the triple rhyme for the record. I just use more leniency on the slant so it's not so contrived. Sung out, we have you could be swept away by her howling rage and leave us adrift on the towering waves. The second line now reinforces Odysseus' strength as a leader to his men, and has Eurylochus admit the importance of Odysseus' guidance. Eurylochus has doubted Odysseus before, so this shows there is a level of trust despite that. Compared to the previous examples, this actually went a lot smoother than I expected. I went with my first instinct. I guess it's because the conceit of the lines is so easy to work with. I don't know. Okay, on to example number 4. I got asked to look at lines from Keep Your Friends Close. Let's play a game. A game? That's what I'm serving. And if you win, you will get what you're yearning. That's what you're serving? What are you, a waiter? A drag queen? Yearning makes a bit more sense, although it needs to be yearning for to be grammatically correct. I have to mention connotation again. Yearn is used for more wistful, long-term contexts. It's not a direct substitute for want. You don't say, I yearn for mac and cheese for dinner tonight. You say, I yearn for the return of the Noodles & Co. Wisconsin Cheddar mac and cheese, 1,050 calories. These word choices were made to keep the rhymes with turning and burning from the previous lines, but clearly the writer ran out of words that would actually make sense. Now, do I keep the turning rhymes? I can try, but I'll go into slant territory. Let's play a game. A game, it'll be worth it. Eyes on the prize, and maybe you'll earn it. Cool, we keep the playfulness, stakes, and the rhyme without sacrificing clarity. Plus, though the lines are slanted with turning, they are not slanted much with each other. That helps keep a natural flow to the song. It feels more intentional than if I did, say, worth it and earning. Intentionality is key. You want your lines to feel like they're meant for one another. Let's hear it sung. Let's play a game, it'll be worth it. Eyes on the prize, and maybe you'll earn it. Great, that was straightforward. One more. Choosing an excerpt from Ruthlessness was a challenge because, like, where do I begin? There's the famously contentious, you're the worst kind of good because you're not even great. Another use to pissed off, be chill with the waves, the list goes on. Honestly, there could be a whole video just working on this song. You're the worst kind of good is the most prominent lyric in this for sure because, like, what the hell does that mean? It can be decoded, but remember, you perceive what he is trying to say, but you also perceive that he does not say it. The song even has a short instrumental break to let that sink in. The writer was very proud of this line.
The worst kind of good, 'cause you're not even great.
I considered saving this line for another video because of its notoriety, but I may as well get it out of the way. You're the worst kind of good, because you're not even great. A Greek who reeks of false righteousness. That's what I hate. Because you fight to save lives, but won't kill and don't get the job done. I mean, you totally could have avoided all of this had you just killed my son. What's trying to be said here is that Odysseus's attempt to be a good person and only blind the Cyclops arguably did more damage than if he put his inhibitions aside and just killed him. A truly great Greek hero would have slain the monster. The wild thing here is that all of these lines could have been condensed into 2. You know, a truly great hero would have slain the beast. And then I'm sitting here wondering to do with the rest of all this. Free-for-all. Okay, not totally a free-for-all. There are some other ideas here, like the following line about hating false righteousness. There is an internal rhyme between Greek and reeks that is pretty natural in this sentence and meter, so I can try keeping with that rhyme scheme. It's really not a bad line, though I'd personally swap false righteousness with self-righteousness since that's the more common phrase. Now, in this context, the only reasonable perfect rhymes for beast are least and released. Well, and deceased, although that's a bit too formal. You know the killing blow would have hurt the least. Change the meter quite a bit on that first line, I know. I felt it could lend itself to more rage than the crunch syllables of the actual lyric. You know a truly great hero would have slain the beast. You know the killing blow would have hurt the least. Next we have, cause you fight to save lives, but won't kill and don't get the job done. The word don't is unnecessary here. You can just say, but won't kill and get the job done. If you want the syllable, just use won't again. But won't kill and won't get the job done. I know it's not a rhyme anymore if you do that, but it is effective repetition. Even with that though, it's still a clunky sentence. Kill and get the job done are synonymous here. Now, since we've already established that not killing was the wrong move, we don't need to establish it again. Or do we? Poseidon is very emotional right now, and he's directing all that rage at Odysseus. He could continue his accusations. We can carry the momentum of the emotion from the previous lines into these next ones. We also haven't gotten an explanation as to why not killing the Cyclops was so wrong. Yes, we can intuit it, but if Poseidon says it, it's more impactful. We'll see the source of his anger. You can call yourself kind. Ooh, alliteration, and it's on that plosive, so you get those nice rhythmic hits. Nice job, Aster. You can call yourself kind and pretend like you're still in the right. The next line is, I mean, you could have totally avoided all this had you just killed my son, which is squished. It's weird because a lot of that squish comes from the word totally, which is being used like a teenager would use it. It also makes the line feel more casual and less serious. And I know Poseidon has this whole surfer dude thing going on, but I feel like in this moment of very heightened emotion, that facade would drop. If you remove totally, you get, I mean, you could have avoided all of this. Notice the word all. You don't need totally because all of this is there. Both things mean all-encompassing. That aside, We'll finish the thought from what I've written so far. My son didn't cease to exist when you robbed him of sight. That's the actual source of anguish here. The Cyclops is still alive, and that means he's still in pain. Just because Odysseus moved on, that doesn't mean the Cyclops or Poseidon did. This reinforces an earlier line in the song, too. That's right, the Cyclops you made blind is mine. Here it is sung. You can call yourself kind and pretend like you're still in the right. My son didn't cease to exist when you robbed him of sight. And I find that a lot more emotionally driven. This is leading up to the emotional high of the song. The casual language can be kept elsewhere. I think it's more effective if Poseidon drops it for more formality. Okay, we got through another 5 questionable epic lyrics. I hope you enjoyed this like you did the last video. Of course, this is all just opinion and personal preference and fun for me and hopefully for you. If you learned something new, comment it down below. I hope you have a wonderful day.